Hey everyone, this is Amanda Schmitt with Snappy New Day Art, and I'm going to show you today how to do a really simple holly and berry design. So first, let me tell you a little bit about what I have here. I have some watercolor paper that's taped down to a little bit of foam board. I have a towel, or you can use paper towels to have nearby. You never know when you need to dab off your brush. I have some water. I have my watercolor palette. Now you don't have to use a watercolor palette, but I really like to use something that's white like this. I love this palette. And then I'm also using a round brush. This is a size 8. I really love using round brushes. They are really, really versatile, and if you are new to watercolor and you're just not sure what kind or size of brush to get, this is what I would recommend, okay? And it doesn't have to be expensive. I've also used, like, these are just from Michael's. They're like $3 a piece, and they work just fine. So you don't have to spend a whole lot, okay? And as far as watercolor paint goes, I'm using my palette. It's a mix of many kinds. I really like the Holbein brand, but you use whatever you have, okay? If you want more recommendations, please let me know, and I'd be happy to kind of steer you where I think you would find some helpful stuff. So yeah, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of sketch out my holly leaves. So I'm using a watercolor pencil. You can use a regular pencil, you can use a colored pencil. It really doesn't matter. I like to use watercolor pencils because when the water hits them, they dissolve and they don't stand out quite as much, but truly it doesn't matter. So let me show you how I sketch out my holly leaves, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is make a curve, and actually let's do a curve, another curve, and another curve. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side, only opposite. So a curve, and another curve, but we're going to meet it at the bottom here. And then we're going to do another one, curve, 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 okay? So that's really all we have to do for that, for the drawing. And we'll do some berries, but those are just circles. I think we can handle that, right? Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, first of all, I like to keep it simple, so I'm going to pick one color of green. So this is my green, and I can't remember what color this one is, but it's a good one. It was in I use a tube. When I make my palette, I use a tube watercolor, and then I squeeze it into my palette and I let it dry and I use it that way. So I'm going to make a little puddle here in my owl on my palette, but I'm going to go back in and clean off my brush and wet it. I don't want it dripping wet, but wet enough to where I can wet my paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically just paint with water on the inside of my holly leaf. Okay, and I can come over here and do the same thing. You could do one at a time, or you could do both. They're pretty small, so it shouldn't matter. They won't dry by the time you get to it. Okay, and so I'm going to take my green here. If you notice, it's a pretty light mixture. I don't want a very dark mixture of green here. This is going to be my first layer. So I want my first layer to be fairly light. Make sure your brush is not super wet. but you want to pick up some of that green paint and just put it everywhere you put the water originally. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this be for now. And let's work on our holly berries. So, like I said, our holly berries are just circles. So I'm going to take a red and I'm just going to sketch out 3 circles. If you really wanted to, you could trace something, but really I don't think berries are. They're not perfect spheres, hardly ever. So, okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to, kind of like I did before with my holly leaves, I'm going to put a little bit of water, just a little bit because these are small little shapes. We don't need a ton of water. We don't need a puddle, but we also need it to be wet enough to where the watercolor has a home to go to. Okay, and then I'm going to pick up some of my red. What color red do I want? I'm going to go with a pretty bright red. Okay, and I'm going to just put my red inside my circle. Okay, and one thing about berries is that often they have a little bit of a shine to them where the light is bouncing off of them. So what I like to do, you can either take a paper towel or you can take whatever you're using and take just a tiny corner and dab away some of the paint to where it leaves a white spot. That will be your highlight. Okay, we're going to go back in and do another layer, but you want to preserve that white as best you can. There. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, since this is a short, quick 12-minute tutorial, and a lot of times we don't have a whole lot of time to paint or create, I'm going to use a heat gun and dry it. You could also use a hair dryer, or if you wanted to, you could let this dry, do your, run your life for the day, and then come back to it and finish it. So I'm going to dry this really fast. Okay, let's go ahead and do our next step. So the next step is to add some details to our holly leaf. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a little more green paint. Okay, and this is where using the tippy tip of my round brush really comes in handy. So what I want to do is I want to picture where the veins of a holly leaf would be. The veins of the holly leaf would go down, and then wherever the cross, the pointy parts stick out would be kind of a vein that came out from the middle. So it would come down, and then it would kind of go out and out and out and out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create those veins without having to draw them. I'm going to use some negative painting to make those show. So let me show you what I mean. So the first thing I'm going to do is come in here and do kind of a little triangle. And then I'm going to leave a little space, and I'm going to come in and do the opposite. The same but opposite side. Do the same thing on the opposite side. That's what I want to say. Okay, see how I can see that first layer still? And then I'm going to keep going with that. So I'm going to draw with the tip of my paintbrush, a little section, and then I'm going to keep that vein area dry still. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And then I just kind of keep repeating that all the way down my holly leaf. And everyone's going to have, it doesn't matter how many sections are in each holly leaf. They'll probably all sort of be a little different, but so don't get too worried about that. And then my other one. See how I'm leaving the veins open? Just using the tippy tip of my brush. Then we can finish this one up. Okay, isn't that cute? I love doing it this way. I was playing around with some Christmas designs a while back, and I was like, well, let's do this way. We'll see what we kind of come up with. So we're going to do the same thing over here. You do have to kind of work slow because you want to use just the tip of that brush to keep it kind of neat. Okay, there you go. I love it. And now we're just going to finish up our berries just a tiny bit more. I'm going to get some more paint. I don't want my brush dripping, but I do want some paint on my brush. And I'm just going to kind of pick one edge of each berry to add a little bit of highlight to. Or not highlight, but a shadow. Make them look a little bit more curved. Okay, so you could leave it like that, or what you could do is clean up your brush, and I like to go around and kind of smooth out that line a little bit. There you go. Now you could totally add some lettering or whatever, but here's the main design, and I'm going to leave it there. So I will see you guys next time.